Happy Saturday. It's been a long time since the Flames have played a game, hey? It's been a while. Welcome to Flamesnation Live. Steinberg and Pike along with you. Hi, Pike.
Hi, Steinberg.
What's going
How
on?
you been, man? I feel like I haven't seen you in 1,000 years.
Like, we both are in the same building for games, but then we don't see each other because we're in different areas, and you're in one spot and I'm in another spot. So I only ever see you. I've seen you at practice once, I think,
I think
since this whole thing has started.
I've seen our mutual friend Ryan Pinder as often as I've seen you since the season started.
Yeah, and Pinder never goes to games, so
and Stanley Cup champion Al Coates. Those are the two people I saw at the last game.
That's good. That's good. That's a good group to talk about, or a good group to see. Hopefully everybody is doing well. Let's take a look. Who do we got in so far? Jimmy in first. Congrats. That's a new. Jimmy's the first time Jimmy's been in first. Jeff's in. Kyle's in. Jason's in. And you know what? Let's start with Jason's question. Let's start with the big news of the hockey world today, and that is the Patrick Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. Here's what I was able to garner. I know Elliot Friedman did some reporting on this on Friday night as well. Yeah, I do believe the Flames were interested in Dubois. I think that there was definitely some conversation there, but I never got the feeling that the Flames were a front runner. I never got the feeling that this was something that was knocking on the door or on the goal line, ready to be punched through. My feeling was always that Calgary might have been, Pike, a second option for Columbus, and I think there was a little bit of Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think he was keeping a few teams on the hook, and I think he was keeping a few teams as kind of stalking horses so that he could make sure that he drove home the deal that he wanted from Winnipeg. I mean, it just felt like right from the get-go, Laine and Roslovic and the opportunity to get those two guys was always going to be the number one option, and maybe trying to get Winnipeg to commit to that by keeping Anaheim, by keeping Calgary, by keeping Montreal in the conversation. I think that might have been what we're talking about. That's kind of the impression that I get, is that Calgary was definitely interested. As we know, Treliving speaks to everybody. He's not he's not out on anything. He's always in on everything. But I never got the feeling from the different places that I checked in and some of the people that I speak to just in different spots that the Flames were ever a front runner for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it was quite as close as Mark Stone was. I mean, you know,
yeah,
the
Mark
Flames
Stone. Mark Stone. They were one of two teams trying to punch that through.
Talk to the people. I talked to representatives of the organization that got Mark Stone, and they were like I remember we covered that trade deadline, and the night before, like the trade deadline was a Monday. On Sunday night, the Flames felt they had him, and then Vegas said, "Okay, we'll give you Brandstrom." They gave them
Brandstrom. Yep.
Like, if you give us Brandstrom, he's yours. And I imagine for Calgary, the Brandstrom is Valimaki or Rasmus Anderson, and the Flames were not willing to do either of those, especially considering, from what I was told, there was no there was no contract extension necessarily done with Mark Stone at that point. So if you don't know you're going to have Mark Stone beyond 2 months, you don't give up your best prospects. But the Vegas felt they had, Vegas had just come off that fantastic draft where they had Cody Glass, and they had Brandstrom, and they had a third guy. They had 3 first rounders that year, and I forget who the third guy was.
Did they not have Suzuki, right?
Suzuki, yeah. And then they ended up throwing Suzuki in a different trade.
Pacioretty deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So game recognized game. I mean, the Flames were right there in it. It doesn't sound like they were right there in this one, but with Brad Treliving as GM, the Flames are, before they were sort of not in the conversation. Now they're in the conversation most of the time, and I think they've gotten enough prospect depth that they can afford to maybe take swings. Like, let's be honest. Like, be quite honest. Could the Flames have put together a package for Roslovic and Laine without blowing up a core of a team that's right now they're pretty happy with. I don't think they could have made it work without causing ripples elsewhere. So honestly, I like the trade for Columbus. I like the trade for Winnipeg. Everyone gets problem
I
solved,
think it
and
was it was a great fit for those two teams. I just don't know. Like, I don't think Winnipeg was super eager to be trading Laine right away. Like, I don't think they were necessarily shopping Laine actively, whereas clearly they were shopping Dubois in Columbus. He wanted out. He would. Some
especially the talk of the hockey world after that last game, that last terrible shift that
oh,
I believe is the first the SB Nation blog. I think it was the First Ohio Battery, who's just
yes.
really good site. If anyone wants to learn more about the Jackets, they're on, I believe, an SB Nation site. They're great, but they did a breakdown of that last 30-second shift that the line had, and I think they had clips from the Fox Sports broadcast, and it was basically just the two broadcasters just being like, what the hell is he doing? Like, he just looked
It was
like
embarrassing.
there was
It
one
was
corner
bad
battle.
rec league work.
I believe our friend Wes Gilbertson on Twitter phrased it as a bad beer league shift, and quote, he knows a thing or two about bad beer league shifts. It was not NHL caliber, and if I was Torts, I
No.
would have finished too, because if you're trying to get the other 19 guys wearing to pull in the right direction, you can't have a guy doing that. So Yarmo, I'll give Yarmo credit. He had his feet to the fire. He had a guy who was obviously not a fit and obviously not happy and wanted out. And his play screamed, "I want out," and they got him out and they got value for him. So I think, what was it? It was Dubois and a third rounder, I
For
believe, in
Laine and
2022
Roslovic.
for Laine and
2022
Roslovic, and
third
then
round pick
Ryan
and Dubois for Laine and Roslovic, which I think is a
was
great
just
fit for both sides.
I think it's a 1.9 million AAV for Roslovic for the next 2 seasons. I think this year, because he signed into the season, the formulation for his cap hit this year is kind of weird because they prorated. Don't ask me how to do the math because it confuses me, and I love the math. But yeah,
Yes,
I
you do.
think it's the X factor is, I mean, if you're Winnipeg, man, you're getting a real good player in like 2 weeks or 7 games from now when he clears the quarantine period, and I don't know how long it'll be until Laine and Roslovic are available to Columbus, because
I think it's going to be less for Laine and Roslovic for Columbus. I think that's about 7 days, and I
like
believe it's 2 weeks. I think for Dubois to get in. I think is what we're talking about.
I think he has to do the Canadian quarantine, which the
Okay, so
feds
he's got
are.
to do a full 2 weeks
Yeah,
before he can join his teammates. So, well, and here's the
so
thing, Pike. Like, so yes, as one of our commenters said, and get your comments in and your questions in. We'll take them live as we continue. It's Pat Steinberg and Ryan Pike with you on Flames Nation Live. Don't forget Flames and Maple Leafs Sunday 2 o'clock. We'll have it for you on Sportsnet 960 The Fan, starting with pregame at noon. But Gaurav says, love that Treliving's always looking to improve the team. And that's what we know about this GM is that he's in on everything. And the Flames are always connected to something. But yeah, it never seemed like a natural fit, them and Dubois, especially with Lindholm at center now, especially with the way Lindholm, Kachuk, and Dube, we'll get to Dube later, but especially the way that has worked to this point. Like, it just never made any sense for that to be a road to go down, to give up the assets that Winnipeg gave up to bring Dubois in. It didn't make much sense for Calgary.
like you and I have been in this market longer than Brad has, so we've seen you already on the GM. But I remember you and I were in Chicago for the Travis Hamonic trade. I believe you were in Pittsburgh I think it was Pittsburgh for the Dougie Hamilton trade.
No, that was
You
Florida. So I was
were,
I was in Florida for the Hamilton
yeah,
trade. I was
but
in Chicago for the Hamonic trade. Where the heck
But
were they?
I think you and I did a radio hit on the draft floor after the Hamnick trade, and our exact phrasing, I think, was something along the lines of, "Well, that makes sense." I mean, with Tree, most of the moves he makes, like spending $6 million for over for 6 seasons on Jacob Markstrom. You look at the trajectory of the team and you go, "That makes sense. Yeah, that seems like a fit." You look at the move they made for Dougie Hamilton. Well, that makes sense. You look at the trade they made to get Lindholm and Hammond, or Lindholm and Hannafin. Well, that makes sense. Like, everything he makes within 30 seconds of it being announced, you can okay, yeah, that seems like something I would do. Whereas, if it, like you said, wasn't really there, I don't know how they'd have to basically shoehorn Dubois into you'd have to move Monahan, and then the money is kind of weird. So I don't know.
It
Good
just
trade.
didn't seem like something that they should dive into, right? Whereas, some of those other trades all made sense. This one would have you would have had to do some serious reconstruction to your roster, and they've already completely restructured the way that they go about things to start this season. It just would have seemed completely out of place for them to do it. So I get I get why you're interested. And I also think there's a benefit if you're the Flames, I think there's a benefit to staying in the conversation to ramp the price up. Like if you can get Winnipeg to give up Laine and Roslovic, that's a Canadian division opponent that you still have 8 games with this season. Like you might as well try and get them to give up as much as humanly possible, hurt them a little bit, right? So like it made sense for Tree to stay in the thing.
Well, they give up what? Like Roslovic's a good young player. They give up arguably the best pure shooter. Like you and I saw that game against Winnipeg where Laine, he had that breakaway. Markstrom's a very good goaltender, and Laine made him look like a beer leaguer because Laine can just shoot. And so they lose those two guys, and they don't get Dubois in their lineup for 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
like if you're everyone else in the North Division, you go, cool. Well, Dubois will help them in 2 weeks, but for now, you got Laine out of the division. I think that's a win for all the teams that, and even if you look at Laine has this is his last year.
Yes, and Dubois got one more year after this.
So like Laine is out of the Flames freak 1 year shot one and done division, and as long as he doesn't land in like Seattle, he's probably going to be out of the Pacific Division going forward. So if you're the Flames, you're so happy only seeing him once or twice a year going forward. It's but no, it's it's a hockey trade. We heard from everyone, Elliot, Pierre LeBrun, Dreger, everyone who has access and a microphone, basically saying that trades are going to be weird this year. Well, we got a trade, and it's going to be weird when everyone lands.
Blockbuster trade too, no less. That is a straight up blockbuster. And so, look,
nice work. It's some nice work by the two general managers because neither guy was in an ideal situation, and they both seem to get value. So, no, very nice work.
Good job. So Dubois, I don't think was ever truly close to being a Flame. I really don't. Front runner all along. Another question that comes in. Let's transition. By the way, Jason asked how close. Like the deal was done. It just something else got derailed on the way. The deal was done. So very close.
It was all but filed. It was for those of you sort of fuzzy on how trades work. Basically, if Pat and I are making a trade, we talk to each other. We go, okay, you want to fax it or should I? We fill out paperwork, we fax it to the league office, and then they call us and we do a trade call to make sure that we have cap space, picks, the players that we're trying to trade actually have contracts, those kind of things. So it was everything but the fax was done.
Yeah, it was. So to answer your question, Jason, very close. That's how close Zucker was to being a Flame a couple of years ago. Jimmy asks, is Dube back tomorrow? That's why I have the graphic up on your screen right now of the lines at practice. Jeff Ward said that it is he's still a possibility for tomorrow. Did not practice today. I would suggest that him not practicing today would not be a good sign for him to play tomorrow, but not a guarantee. Those are your lines. Mangiapane up with Lindholm and Kachuk, moving him off Backlund's line. So Bennett and Levo were Backlund's wingers. Monahan, Simone, Gaudreau remain together, and then there's your fourth line. Now, my understanding on the Dube situation is that we're not talking about something long term. So they're essentially everything that I'm led to believe is the term that we're using, an abundance of caution, and that is everything I'm led to believe with Dube is that everything's being done in an abundance of caution. So I guess he could play tomorrow. Him not practicing today, I would suggest unlikely, but could it happen? Maybe. But I don't think we're talking about a long-term thing. But I will say this is a real good underlining of just how damn good Lindholm, Dubé, and Kachuk have been. You take Dubé away from this lineup, it looks different. Not a good fill in there because he is. I think he'll be great there. He's got history with Lindholm and Kachuk. What really changes is you go from having a solid, like, okay, you've got three 1A or number two lines. Like, you've got the Lindholm line, the Monahan line, the Backlund line, each with a good forward pairing. Now you take Mangiapane away from Backlund, pop him up with Lindholm and Kachuk, and now no knock on Levo and Bennett, but I don't like those forward pairings as much as I like Backlund and Mangiapane as a forward pairing. That, to me, is a number two line. And you've got Monahan Gaudreau as a number two line. And you've got Kachuk and Lindholm as maybe a number one line. It goes from being a top nine to a clear separation from top six to bottom six. So that's what not having Dubé potentially tomorrow does. Good news is I don't think this is super long term, but if he misses, you definitely see the difference, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I think if this was the first week in May and the Flames are scraping to get a playoff spot cemented, or if it's a playoff type scenario, I think it's the type of thing that you probably see him skate or you probably see him play, even if he doesn't play as much as he normally does. But it's the Flames have the benefit of they got 5 of the first 6 points locked down. They have some breathing room. Points percentage wise, they're the top team in the West, despite they haven't played in a week. I mean, the first week outside of having a few ugly periods probably went as good as they could hope for. So they have more breathing room and the ability to be cautious with guys like Dubé. And like you said, Dubé is a really important player, and without him, they become a bit more top heavy. I think traditionally, the first 3 games we've seen Jeff Ward operate with sort of a top 9 and then a fourth line that plays a lot less than the other 3 lines. And it's worked. I mean, it makes it easy for matchups. I mean, I think the goal of having I think you and I separately both did some breakdowns of some of how things have been going the first 3 games at Flamesnation, and you looked really in depth at that first line, and I looked a bit more in depth generally, sort of how the rest of the lines are going. Back in the line with primarily Mangiapane and Levo, really good. Have they been great? No, they've been really good. The only reason they haven't had to be great is because that first line has been great. So you have 2 lines that can eat the tough matchups and the tough zone starts, and that gives you the ability to give Gaudreau, Monahan, and Simone as much high ground and breathing as you can. And the same thing's been true with the defensive pairings, with the Flames that have gotten enough out of their the new top 2 pairings, that they've been able to give Valimaki and Nesterov a ton of high ground and breathing room. So the good news is their defensive groups they'll still be able to roll their 3 pairings, but it's going to be a little bit more top heavy and a little bit dicier in terms of how they operate their forwards, at least for a game or 2.
Here's a question from Jimmy. When will Riddick get his first start? That's a heck of a question. I know Mike did a breakdown of that at Flames Nation earlier this week. Go check that out. And I think
Monday.
Was that?
Mike's prediction was Monday.
I was going to say one of these next 2 games would be a good spot for him. Get him a home start before you've got that back-to-back next week, because for sure he's going to play one of the Monday or Tuesday, right? There'd be no reason to play Markstrom Monday, Tuesday versus the Jets of next week, right? So you might as well, because if you haven't looked at the Flames schedule, they play tomorrow against the Maple Leafs. They go Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then 3 in 4 Monday, Tuesday, Thursday against the Jets. So they got their first true back-to-back coming up next Monday and Tuesday. So Riddick's going to start one of those. So why don't you give him a start before that too? I think Monday's a good prediction from Gold. And if it's not there, then maybe the first game of that road trip. But I would suggest Monday. Not Monday. Tuesday against the Maple Leafs would be a good start. Good.
I mentally both thinking this is a Sunday game, a Saturday game tomorrow, even though it's Sunday.
I know it's all messed up.
I'm on board with you and Mike's prediction, because I think the cool thing is you have 2 against Toronto, then 2 against Montreal. So you have the benefit, especially with an off day in between, you have the benefit of you put Markstrom in to start for tomorrow, and all indications are Markstrom's going to be going tomorrow. And then you see how he feels, you see how he operated. You kind of get a sense for how the Flames responded to Toronto, and then heading into the Tuesday night game, you can make tweaks. And
Yep.
let's be honest, that's the whole point of having 2 good goalies, and that's the whole point of having the lines they are. Because I figure, like, presumably, if we don't see Dube tomorrow, we'll see Dube probably Tuesday. And if we don't, I
Fingers
imagine if
crossed.
we don't see Riddick we probably won't see Riddick tomorrow. So I'm thinking we probably see him Tuesday or in Montreal. So I think we're about to see them sort of dip their toe into the water a bit in terms of how they operate with all their players. And what they got, a week. First Battle of Alberta is February 6th.
Yes.
So they got it basically a couple more weeks to sort of get their legs under them before they really start hitting the meat of the schedule. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. But I'd be shocked if we don't see Riddick this week at least once.
Final question before we wrap up today's Flames Nation Live from Elias. How about Nestorov? He's been playing pretty solid. It's a great signing by Treliving. You know what? Like, I give that a lot of credit. Like, when I think about the way that this 6D, when healthy, shapes up, I like it a lot. Like, you've got a top 4 that's playing fine. Giordano Anderson, Tanev, and Hanifin, those have been just fine as your top 2 pairings. And as you said a little earlier, it's allowed Jeff Ward and Ryan Huska to shelter Nestorov and Valimaki a little bit. I'm not saying that you got to continue doing that, but Valimaki hadn't played NHL hockey since April 2019. Nestorov hadn't played NHL hockey since 2017. So ease them into it and give them a chance to succeed early, and then as they continue to excel, and they have excelled, I think, through 3 games, then you can start to even things out a little bit, and you can bring down their zone starts, and you can make their minutes a little tougher. But when you've got the ability to ease them back into NHL hockey, do it. I think Nesterov's been great. I've really enjoyed that signing.
An Olympic gold medalist with a couple hundred games of NHL ice under his belt, and I believe he won the Gagarin Cup in Russia for the KHL championship a couple years ago. He's in the KHL. Like, they got a guy who is legitimately good and taught himself English because he wanted to be in North America, and they got him for league minimum. Like, that's just, if you get a guy who can help you at all for league min, you take it.
Yep.
And it was an easy gamble. And let's be honest, if you sign a guy like Nestorov for league minimum and he sucks, waive him, throw him in the taxi squad. Yeah, who cares? But it's like, even you look at what they've got so far. Like, I think of the group of guys he's got for league min, Nestorov might be the greatest value they've gotten, and that's no.
I was going to say,
no
all
slight.
the guys. So they signed the 4 guys. They signed Nestorov as the 1 blue liner, then Levo, Simone, Nordstrom as the 3 forwards. Of all the guys,
875. Everybody else is league men.
Yes. Levo's the only one that's a little higher. But of all those 4, the guy that has been the best fit so far, it's 3 games in. Very, very aware of that. But the guy that's been the best fit so far has been Nestorov for sure.
Yep, and you got to give the Flames some credit, because up until they basically went the better part of a decade with basically no Russian players in the organization whatsoever. And Brad Treliving, he brought in Derek McKinnon, who is one of his pro scouts when he was in Arizona. He brought Derek McKinnon in. They brought in Robert Newhouser, who was a pro scout for Arizona back when Treliving was there. And those 2 guys have been, along with a couple other of their scouts, like Håkan Lub's been part of it too, because he's very connected in Europe. But they thought Russia was one of the areas where they were really weak relative to other teams in terms of finding value. And just the last few years, I mean, the group of guys they put in there, they've gotten Zagadulin, they've got in Yellison, who played games last year, was perfectly fine as a very stay at home low event defenseman. They got Nestorov. I mean, it was an area where they thought they wanted to improve, and they managed to find value there. So, I think it's one of the things that's they're gonna be really looking forward in the future. Just keep trying to find guys and bring in value. And we the last few years, like they went out and they got Yan Kuznetsov out of he was playing in University of Connecticut, but he's a Russian guy.
Yep.
They've got Ilya Solovyov in Belarus, who's playing in Minsk in the KHL. So they've gone and found a bunch of guys that can be a cultural fit with each other and speak the language. I mean, and I'm a big Dmitry Zavgorodny guy. I think when Stockton gets going, whenever they get going in February, I think their first game is February 5th. Zavgorodny is my dark horse pick to be sort of a breakout guy his first year pro, because he was really good playing a handful of games in the KHL. So, you got to give credit where it's due. They had absolutely no Russians like 5 years ago, and now they have sort of a small enclave of Moscow playing for them.
There was a dark period there where Daryl Sutter didn't touch Russian players. There was the Craig Button era where some very strange Russian picks, and then ones that didn't work out, and then no Russian players under Daryl and Jay Feaster. I think Feaster did Rafikov. That was like the first one in years, and then now Red Treliving's really opened up the scouting book.
We're gonna age ourselves here. And I can't remember if this is an urban legend that's been passed off as truth for a while, so it might be true, maybe not. Drafted Andrei Medvedev. He was like a third or fourth round pick in the 90s as a goalie, and he apparently failed or was very close to failing his entry medical one year when he came for training camp because he was a little bit chubby. He was a little bit soft.
There is a great, and we don't have to get to it because we got to wrap up, but look, I remember seeing him as a backup goalie for Russia at a World Juniors. They beat Canada. I don't remember what year it was, but Canada was up 2-0, and Russia stormed back and won like 5 or 6-2. And this would have been the late 90s because Paul Romanek and Gary Green were still doing the World Juniors. I remember it vividly, and they showed this picture of of Medvedev waiting to celebrate on the ice. You're like, that's an NHL prospect goaltender. You're like, it just was a little bit. You're like, whoa, just not exactly what you're used to seeing. I digress. Good stuff on the good stuff. Exactly. Good stuff on the comments. Great stuff. We'll see when Riddick gets the start. We'll see about Dillon Dube. I will tell you, lots of stuff happening at Flames Nation right now. I've got my latest up there, taking a look at forward usage. Pike is always writing. He's the most prolific guy. Mike Gould's got his breakdown on all of the goaltending stuff. What else can you tell us about what's kicking at Flames Nation right now, Pike?
Oh, Lordy. Well, coming up later in the week, I have a historical look at someone who next week, at this rate, a week to yesterday, will be hitting 900 games with the Flames. So we're looking at the career of Mark Giordano and sort of where he fits in, because if you look at sort of Giordano's background against both in the National Hockey League and just within the Flames, he's a really, really special and significant where he fits in. And if there's a case to be made for putting his number up in the rafters, whatever the hell the new building is going to be called, when he decides to hang it up, because God knows Giordano's going to play till he's 50. So
yeah, he'll get 1,500 in by the time it's all said and done. Thank you, Pike. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll do another one early next week. As you know, Flames Nation Live every twice a week is what we're trying to do. Maybe 3 times a week, depending on news, but at least twice a week is what we're trying to do in season. Check out Pike on Instagram and on Twitter. Do the same if you want with me. And don't forget, Flames Maple Leafs 2 o'clock on Sunday. We'll have it live for you on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Labardius joined me to get ready for Calgary and Toronto, first of 9 between those two teams this year. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Be well, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you next week.